Winston Churchill, one of the greatest statesmen ever known in history, once asked these questions in one of his writings. He wrote, "Why are we here? What is the purpose of life? And whither are we going?" What would have caused him to ask these sort of questions? Well, the answer to that lies in him trying to understand human nature and the advancement of technology and the dangers that proposed. In this video, I want to share with you why religion, properly understood, is vitally important for our future, especially when it comes to the advancement of technology. We see things like AI exponentially getting better and more advanced every day, every month. Pretty soon, it's going to be able to do things that we currently even now think are not possible. And there are a lot of dangers now with the advancements of AI and other technologies that's going to make it even more vital for us to live our religion, but we cannot do so unless we properly understand it. We cannot have a healthy nation or healthy politics unless we are principled. So let's get into this. So something you should better understand about me is I love history, and I've been fascinated by some particular historical figures. And usually they center on American figures, but Winston Churchill is one of these notable exceptions. And if you've seen the movie The Darkest Hour, which you should also definitely read the book. It's really good. And just put a comment below if you want me to do a book review of that book. It's fantastic. So Churchill, in addition to being a really great statesman and great politician and being the leader of Great Britain during World War II, and actually he was like their sole reason why they did not give in to the Nazis, he was a prolific writer, and in fact he was very well known for his writings. That was his primary source of income, especially when he wasn't gainfully employed by the government because he wasn't voted into office. Anyways, he wrote something called 50 Years Hence, where he's trying to look forward into the future in regards to technology and trying to understand human nature, and also the dangers, especially the dangers of these revolutionary but corrupt ideas from communism. And he brought up some really good points. You really need to hear this. Let me share it with you. He says, "We have the spectacle of the powers and weapons of man far outstripping the march of his intelligence. We have the march of his intelligence proceeding far more rapidly than the development of his nobility. We may well find ourselves in the presence of the strength of civilization without its mercy." That's a powerful statement. Now, before I go on, I just have to say, what he's pointing out here is that, so we have weapons, right? We have this technology's powers and weapons, and even though he's talking about what he saw happen then, because at that time, the greatest advancement that they were seeing was obviously the nuclear bomb, but he saw far more things in the future, well advanced beyond that. And this applies to us today. And the troubling thought here is that, all right, these technologies, they go beyond our intelligence. Like, do we have enough intelligence and enough understanding to comprehend the consequences of the things that we develop, or even to wisely make decisions and guide ourselves? But beyond that, though, he warns that our intelligence, so even though now people can go to school, it's very easy to gain knowledge, our intelligence is proceeding far more rapidly than the development of our nobility. And what he's saying here is that this nobility, in other words, our ability to behave in such a way that it is above the natural man. It is not given into the carnal state of things, the natural way of things that ultimately lead to destruction. And as we know as Latter-day Saints, right, that if we give into the carnal man, the natural man, then it's an enemy to God, and it always leads to not just spiritual destruction, but also human destruction. The Book of Mormon makes that very clear, so does the Bible. And so he says we may find ourselves in the presence of strength of civilization without its mercy. In other words, we could have the greatest of all powers to do basically anything. Think of like the Hunger Games, right? They can literally build an arena, and they can do anything. They can make these mutations, these mutts they call them. So basically, new creatures. This technology, they can put a whole force field around it. Yet, all the districts are starving. All these people are poorly treated. They are enslaved. So, in other words, it doesn't matter how much power and technology you have if we don't have the ability to have mercy. And mercy comes out of this nobility, this ability to act moral, to have a sense of higher judgment, a spirituality that guides you. Then we are going to create despotism. As he's putting here, and as we should understand as Latter-day Saints, if your moral character is not there, it doesn't matter what you do, right? And there's something to be said about that. The more technology, the more comforts, the more ease you create for people. There's not a correlation of things should be better for people's hearts, right? For their spirituality, for what actually provides human happiness. Because comforts don't provide human happiness. They facilitate opportunities for more happiness, potentially, but they are not the source of it. And this is something Winston Churchill, he observed. He says here, after all, this material progress, in itself so splendid, does not meet any of the real needs of the human race. Hear that? So all this progress we make, it doesn't meet our real human needs. So he mentions that he was reading a book that talked about the civilizations of the past. And he mentions that they enjoyed pleasures and sympathies that were incomparably wider than our own. So they had something more fulfilling to them. How is that possible? They lived a much more restricted life. But they didn't have the technologies, the powers there. And he said, what did they know more than we about the answers to the simple questions which man has asked since the earliest dawn of reason? Why are we here? What is the purpose of life? Whither are we going? Those are great questions, Churchill. And I hope Joseph Smith or one of the apostles or prophets or Book of Mormon prophets was there to shake your hand and say, Churchill, I saw that you wrote these questions down. Anyways, I digress. He goes on to say, no material progress, even though it takes shapes we cannot now conceive, or however it may expand the faculties of man, can bring comfort to his soul. What? Did I just time jump and now it's nighttime? Anyways, he's right. None of these things are going to bring comfort to their souls. As Michael Knowles says, we all have God-shaped holes in us. We have something that yearns, that needs God and godliness given to us. We need religion. We need something that feeds the innermost part of us to give us peace, to give us comfort. Because ultimately, we are eternal beings in a mortal existence. So, I want to keep reading here because it starts to get better, or like it starts to get more in depth. It says, it is this fact, more wonderful than any that science can reveal, which gives the best hope that all will be well. Projects undreamed of by past generations will absorb our immediate descendants. Forces terrific and devastating will be in their hands. Comforts, activities, amenities, pleasures will crowd upon them, but their hearts will ache. Their lives will be barren if they have not a vision above material things. That is exactly what the gospel of Jesus Christ gives us. It gives us a vision above material things. It fills us with the things that no physical item, no pleasurable experience could ever give us. We don't go to church because it's pleasurable. We don't read the scriptures because it's pleasurable. We do these gospel-related activities because it does something for our spirits, which are eternal. We are connected to our Father in heaven. We are His creation. We're His children. We constantly long for and yearn for these things. And when we can't find them, what do you think happens? Well, people turn to other forms of religion. Communism, socialism, those are just alternative forms of religion. It's a new belief system. It's a new way of establishing justice and mercy. And it's all corrupt. And it always leads to devastating effects because it is literally antithetical to the actual gospel of Jesus Christ. This is why, if you look to the past civilizations, you're going to notice a pattern. So the pattern is that all these previous civilizations large civilizations, have merged the power of state with religion because, well, there's a couple of reasons. One is that if the power of state is the highest moral authority, it has godly authority, godly power, then it is justified in anything it does. It cannot be held back by the wills of the people. The people have to submit their wills to the power of the state. But the other side of it is it becomes very easy. It was very lazy way of living, right? It's the same reason why living in a democratic republic like we do is so hard, because we have to make choices. We have to live as sovereign citizens. We have to be so we have to be independent and self-reliant. We have to think for ourselves, which means therefore we have to go out and innovate and try things. And we are accountable and responsible for the actions and the contributions we make to our society. So here is the incredible genius of the gospel of Jesus Christ, is that the gospel of Jesus Christ empowers mankind to be like God, to be capable of having dominion over the elements within his sphere of influence, of stewardship. Therefore, he can create and do great and beautiful things in this life. And he will also, because if he follows and lives the gospel of Jesus Christ properly, he will then create communities. He will uplift mankind, create communities of strength, of places like Zion, where people can be of one heart and of one mind. This is why it's actually pretty vital as Latter-day Saints that we don't get caught up in trying to turn to the state for establishing means of social equality, right? Social justice. That is not where you turn to. You turn to Christ to right all these wrongs, and the state is there to ensure that you have rights in order to live free and have the freedom to worship and to right wrongs on a personal relationship basis. And the only way we can heal the wrongs of the past and get over them is through Jesus Christ. You cannot make reparations of any sort in order to make it right again. That's like Ammon going to the Lamanites and saying, hey, I've got a great plan. Us Nephites, we're going to pay reparations to y'all because you guys think that we stole the government from your daddy's daddy, and you should be in charge of us now, and you actually should be our leader, so we're going to pay reparations. And then King Lamoni was like, I love this. Can I get baptized and also rule over you now? But that's how some Latter-day Saints treat the gospel and the conflating gospel principles with these corrupt anti-religious or alternative religious ideologies, or even bits of them, right? They don't have to say, oh, I support socialism or Marxism. They just have to say, hey, I think there's too many rich people that don't pay enough taxes and the poor are suffering, or that we should pay reparations to those whose ancestors were slaves, or we should have more social programs to help people do X, Y, Z, rather than empowering their souls and their minds to the gospel of Jesus Christ to overcome their circumstances. That's something I'm paraphrasing a quote by Ezra Taft Benson, which you should probably recognize from this channel multiple times now. Surprise! So going back to technology and human nature, how it doesn't change, and the need for religion, well, something the Founding Fathers studied a lot is they studied human nature. They studied as much history as they could get their hands on, understood the unevolving nature of human nature, the unevolving state of human nature, that we have a lot of proclivities towards corruption. And they found that there was a single powerful element or force or pillar, as George Washington put it, that ensured that the people could stay free, that ensured the people would actually live by this Constitution, which they knew was inspired of God. We believe was inspired of God, right? And you know what that was? It was religion. They knew that if they have not just any religion, Christianity, the Bible, this is why they mandated the Bible to be read and taught in schools, because they were so concerned, especially knowing how revolutions often cycle right back into anarchy and despotism. They were really concerned about making sure that this nice little updraft, right, of Christianity in America, which enabled them to fight for independence because they were willing to be sovereign. They didn't want that to go away because they didn't want the nation to cycle right back down, even despite the Constitution. So they wanted to make sure that was taught everywhere. That way people could educate their consciences and tailor their manners. They would self-impose chains. You've recognized that as a quote from the channel here. They would impose upon themselves chains on their behaviors to live in such a way that they can get along. They can have communities. They can have a sense of morality in which they can rely upon and have expectations of each other. And they would not spiral out of control into corruption. I don't know if I'm hitting this hard enough, so let me read a couple quotes for you. John Adams was actually pretty eloquent, and he's a very smart guy. He had something to say about people's temperaments and whether or not we had a strong enough government, or if we needed something to ensure people would live by the Constitution and keep the government strong, keep the nation whole. He said, "We have no government armed with power capable of contending with human passions, unbridled by morality and religion." What? "Avarice, ambition, revenge, or gallantry would break the strongest cords of our Constitution as a whale goes through a net. Our Constitution is designed only for a moral and religious people." He says it again. Morality, religion. "It is wholly inadequate for any other." And let me just say this home one more time. I know these are quotes you've probably heard on this channel a lot, but man, they are powerful. George Washington said this in his farewell address, which he had published throughout the nation. And yes, Alexander Hamilton helped him with this, but you got to think about how this is something that everyone seems to be overlooking nowadays, but we really shouldn't. He says, "Of all the dispositions and habits which lead to political prosperity, religion and morality are indispensable supports." Think about that. The things, the habits, the dispositions that lead to political prosperity, religion, morality. He says, "A volume could not trace all their connections with private and public felicity." And then he says, "Let us with caution indulge the supposition." In other words, let's be careful that we don't just flagrantly make the assumption that, quote, "morality can be maintained without religion. Whatever may be conceded to the influence of refined education of minds and peculiar structure, reason and experience both forbid us to expect that national morality can prevail in exclusion of religious principle." In other words, as smart as you might make yourself, or as Winston Churchill said, right, that our education has superseded our nobility. And what we're trying to get at here is, doesn't matter how smart you think you are, and if you try to maintain any essence of morality, once you have thrown religion out the window, morality declines. Morality is of no value, of no worth. Science cannot determine morality. All the surveys and all the polls will never determine what is right, what is wrong, and where to lead us. But religion will. Religion will. It will endue the mind with this nobility, with this sense of a higher way of thinking and living and acting. So where does technology run into all this? Well, we're getting to the point where not only can technology do so many incredible things, we're at a point where, because of the lack of religion and therefore a lack of morality, people are no longer going to put limitations upon what technology can do. It's going to eventually do basically everything. And it can create, and it will create, terrible levels of harm and danger and bad for the individual, for the community, for the family, for the nation, for the world. Unless we can be righteous, unless we can enlarge our agency, as Elder Bednar puts it, when we make covenants with God and we enlarge agency because now we are living in His way, we choose to follow Him and His commandments and to see things as He would see them and to do things as He would do them, then we will avoid the great dangers and calamities that will befall us just from these technological advancements. So that's all I wanted to share with you today. I know it's a little bit like I was middle of the day, now it's dark. The heck is on my arm? Sticker for my daughter. Anyways, thank you so much for listening. And if you want to hear more about this or want to know a little bit more about Winston Churchill or any other particular things, put them in the comment section below. I'd love to hear about them. I appreciate your time. Please share this with someone that you might know. because that's how this channel grows the most. Share, comment with something meaningful, and I'll talk to you all next time.